Welcome back to the Honest Art Podcast. I've done some thinking lately, and I thought, sometimes being a professional artist often feels like me being back in middle school, where I've, changed clothes because I'm going into PE, and I put on oversized gym clothes, and I'm just standing out in the gym, and there's like the popular girl or the jock, and they're choosing teams, and I'm just standing there and I'm just waiting to be chosen. And sometimes that's what it feels like being an artist, where maybe you want to be chosen for an exhibition, or maybe you want to be chosen for an art fair, maybe you want to be chosen by a gallery, but that's what it feels like, right? And I don't know about you, but I was always chosen like last or maybe next to last. And I was, anyway, I didn't blame them. I could barely dribble basketball. I wouldn't have chosen me either. But that lingers, that feeling of not enoughness and our fear that can carry over into, trying to make money as an artist. So I've got a solution for you. And that is, we got to stop waiting to be chosen. And we've got to choose ourselves. We've got to like create our own game and move forward, because the truth is nobody's going to just come to us and choose us. I mean, it does happen occasionally when people, it did happen sometimes in my life as, when people wanted to carry my work, but we can't count on that. So in this week's Honest Art Podcast, we are talking about what we can do to create our own art show. And I can tell you, like last year, I participated in a couple of different art shows, and they are so exciting. They can be a lot of work, but when you know how to do it, it is so much easier. That's what we're going to talk about on this podcast, is how to pull off a bomb-ass art show so you can sell a lot of art and you can quit waiting to be chosen. Are you ready? Let's get messy. Okay, so when I said I'm going to help you out, tell you how to pull this off, this is what we're going to talk about. Ready? Okay, so I've made a list. So we're going to talk about how do you decide whether you want to do a solo show or you want to do a group show of 3 people, or maybe it's 2 people, but usually I recommend 3, but there's benefits to both. So we're going to talk about that. Then we're also going to talk about how to choose a venue. And, what I find is where am I supposed to host, a show? Well, I'm going to give you 11 different ideas for you. And most of them are free, by the way. So 11 different ideas of where you can host a show. We're going to talk about how to choose a date, how to promote it. That's always the big thing, because, that we're not always great at promoting ourselves. So what you can do to promote it to have the best success and the most eyeballs on your show, what you'll actually need, the things that you're going to need to do to pull off the show, and then how to actually install the show. So lots to cover. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first one is, you need to decide, do you want to do a solo show with just you and your work, or do you want to do a group show, or, like a 3-person show, a 5-person show, whatever you want to do. My recommendation is, the more artists that you have in the show, that's great, but that's going to be more opportunities for dissenting opinions. So it's going to be a little bit harder to come to a consensus on all of the consensus on the decisions you're going to have to make. When do we want to do it, and where do we want to do it, and what's going to be the music? There's so many decisions to have to make. So the more number of artists you include, you'll have a lot more varying opinions. Whereas if you have fewer artists, you can generally come to a consensus a little bit easier. I think 3 is a great number for a show, but there's no specific number that's better or worse, but there are benefits to including more people than just yourself. Again, I'm going to talk about the benefits of doing a solo show too. But number one, you're going to have expenses, right? Maybe you are going to have a venue. Maybe you're going to have a bartender, all kinds of, renting things. So you will have expenses. And if you can share those expenses, it's going to kind of make it a whole lot easier to be profitable in your show. The next thing that's so, so great about having a group show is that you get to have more eyes and new eyes on your work than you maybe would have had in any other way. So let's say you do a show with 2 other artists. Well, you have all of their community of collectors or their community of fans. And maybe it's just their family or their acquaintances, but they've seen, a lot of the work that they've done. So they're excited to come to a show where they can support their friend, but also get all those, they get to take a look at your work, and then you get all of their new emails and those new connections and all of that networking. So to me, that's one of the best reasons to have a group show. The other thing is that you get to have shared labor. And the shared labor is so important because, it's like when you go to install the show, to have people helping you out is so it's absolutely invaluable. And also there's a lot of moving parts, as we're going to talk about, the emails and, contacting some press in your area, which would be helpful, or maybe just finding a photographer, or like I said, the bartender, or whatever. And if you can divide up that labor, you're just going to have a whole lot more fun. That's the thing. You want to have a really good time while you're doing this, or you're never going to do it again. And also you're it's going to come across. It's going to come across as more laborious than fun. So those are the benefits of, I'm sure there's more that I'm not thinking about, but those are the big benefits to doing more of a group show. So what are the benefits to doing a solo show? Well, like I said, the number one benefit of doing a solo show is you get to have all the control, right? You are in full creative control of everything and every decision that happens for your show. And that can be awesome, because you can be like, oh my gosh, I want to paint that wall this, or I want to have, hanging lanterns, or I want to whatever it might be. You got full creative control. Nobody's the boss of you. You can do whatever the hell you want. The next thing is you get to tell your story about yourself and your art exclusively. Now, I always recommend that when a group show, and we're going to talk about it a little bit more, you tell your story. You may even have stories written next to each piece. So there's still an opportunity to tell your story. It's just that with a solo show, you get to do exclusively for you and your art. Which comes to the third thing, and that is that it really is just undivided attention on your art. So with a group show, obviously, people come, we'll have a lot more people attend for sure. That's another benefit of the group show. You'll likely have a lot more people attend, but there will be divided attention on the art. And, sometimes people will be like, oh, I want to buy a piece. So they might end up buying a piece from somebody else rather than buying a piece from you. That's totally fine. But with a solo show, you will have undivided attention. Okay. Now, once you've decided whether you are going to do a solo show or a group show, then you've got enough information to decide, where do you want to host the show? And I know a lot of times people are like, well, I paint in my kitchen, or I paint in my garage, or, how can I host a show, in my house? And I'll tell you, I've worked with a lot of artists who host shows in their home, and it's a cool sort of intimate setting. Now for something like that, you may not want to use all of your walls to show your art, but you can lease easels, or you can borrow easels from your artist friends. There are lots of ways that you can do it. You can also hang the art on the walls, but you can show a lot more art if you also use easels. So your home is a great place to host a show. And the next thing is, if you have a studio, obviously you can host it in your studio. Some people are like, well, my studio is so small. That's okay. You can figure out ways to work around that. Maybe you had like set up a table for drinks just outside of your door, or, you can make it work. And people love seeing where the artist works. So having a show at your studio, maybe you stagger it. If it's like a really, really small studio, you can stagger it to where you invite people, like maybe some people you invite from 4 to 5, other people you invite from 5 to 6, whatever that might be. There are ways to work around it if you feel like your studio is too small, but a studio is a great place to host a show. Next one, and I have done this before, you can host it at maybe a salon. You could contact a coffee shop, places like that. They love having like new people come in that might bring in some new customers for them. One time I hosted a show at a salon, and I know like a lot of people are like, I'm not sure I want to have my art in a hair salon. And so what I did, and I think I may have mentioned this before, but what I did is I had a friendship with the owner of the salon, and she's like, we should really hang your art here. And I said, well, I would love to do that, but here's an idea. What if we did a one night only show where we invited all of the people on your email list? So that really helped get more eyeballs on my art, right? So she agreed to that, to my big surprise. She agreed, and we had a one night only opening. I sold a ton of art from that, and then I got some new collectors, and I just got some new fans of my art. So don't overlook coffee shops, salons, little things like that. But also, don't just put your art in there. Like, try to drum up a show for yourself. The next thing is, and I think this is a little bit more common now than it has been. And that is when I say a little more common now, what I mean is like since COVID, where, prior to COVID, everybody was working outside of their homes. After COVID, so many people were working in home or working remote. And so now what we have is we have a little bit more of an influx of empty storefronts. And so I think it'd be so cool if you saw a storefront, especially if it's in like a high traffic area or in a convenient area, if you contacted the person who owns that and, say, hey, I'm thinking about doing a pop-up show, one night or, whatever, maybe it's 2 days, but whatever it might be, host a show in an empty storefront. Well, hello. I love this on YouTube. You can probably see my cat come and go. Okay, next one. Think about hosting a show at a community space. So what does a community space look like? It could be a library. I know I just went to a show a few months ago at the Austin Public Library. That was, a public show, but, it was the great thing about these community spaces. Oftentimes they're free or they're very minimal. Another one would be a place of worship. Last year I went to an artist who was hosting a show. Actually, it was a couple artists. It was a group show that was hosting it at a church. You can do a church or a synagogue, any kind of place of worship. And that's great because then you also have the announcement go out to the congregation. So you get more eyeballs on your work that way. And then another community space would just be like, at a club. A lot of people are members of clubs. Maybe it's a country club or just any kind of maybe a racquetball club or something like that. You can host a show in your club. You can likely do that. Again, the idea is to get new eyeballs on your work. So that's a great way to get new eyeballs on your work. All right, there's a few more. And again, these are things that I know artists that have done this and they've done it really, really successful. So another one is to host it at a winery or a brewery. Again, now this is going to, remember I said we cannot wait to be chosen. I know an artist that did a show at a winery, and she went to the winery and she suggested it. She's like, hey, what about, on this particular weekend, we do a joint thing where I, show my art, and then you get those people come in. I'm sure they'll drink wine. It's a win-win for everyone. So a winery or a brewery, great place. And also they're drinking. That's never bad. It's never bad because that the money slides out of their wallet just a little bit easier. So great place to host a show. Next one, I've worked with another artist who hosted a show in a yoga studio, invited, the members there. Very, very cool. Great place to do it. And then lastly, and this is cool, I think this is a great option, and that is to host a show in an abandoned building. Now, obviously you want to get permission. Nobody needs to get arrested for this, right? But if you could do, that would be a really kind of edgy look, and the way you promote it, that could be really cool. Maybe the community or the local newspaper, that's really interesting. So hosting a show with permission in some sort of abandoned building, that would be really, really neat to do. All right. So next thing you do. So once you decide where to host the show, it's just like a wedding, right? You need to pick the date. And this is important because some of these places will already have obligations. So you're really kind of going to be looking at hosting a show, just like a wedding, maybe 6 months out, or like definitely 3 months, but definitely you're going to need to plan ahead is my point, right? So pick a date, actually pick a location and start working with them on picking a date. Now, when you're picking a date, there's a few things that you need to consider. And what you need to consider is what's going down in your town, wherever you want to host it, what's happening. Like when I'm picking a date, one of the worst dates that I could ever pick in Austin would be like during ACL, which is Austin City Limits Music Festival. Like the traffic is crazy. People can't get around. Everything's crowded. But more than that, people are distracted. They are so distracted by this huge event that's happening. But it doesn't even have to be like some ginormous event. It could be something as simple as like if maybe you live in a big football area, right? And if you want to look at the calendar and you don't want to pick a date where there's like some huge football game or something on that particular date. Like I live in Texas, football is everything, right? And so even if it's high school football, you got to be kind of careful. Like if you're going to be choosing, should I do it on a Friday night or a Saturday night? Well, Friday night football is real here in Texas. So in that case, I would pick a Saturday. But in general, you know what I'm talking about? It's like, I remember for a few years back, I hosted an open studio show during South by Southwest, thinking, oh, that would be such a great idea, to do the show during South by. But the problem is people were so distracted. There were other things, other venues that they were going to, things that were not available any other time of the year. So it was a bust. So remember, I said I've made all the mistakes. Don't be like me. Pick a date where you feel like it's going to be open and people are going to be like, hey, what can we do this weekend? And they pick you to go and see your show. All right. So now once you've picked your date, it's important to pick a theme. And the reason you want to pick a theme is because you want to have something that people can relate to. So like if you're just saying, hey, I'm having, a show, people are like, oh, that's cool. But if you said, hey, I'm having a show and it's all about women's voices, right? Or it's all about, elevating something, like pick a theme that is so cool. Like you see this a lot with galleries when they'll pick a theme for a show. They'll be like, we're having our blue show. Right. And so then artists come in and they show all of the work from these artists as blue. And then the collector's like, oh, that could be cool. Let's go see what that's about. Like pick a theme and make sure it's relatable. So what a theme does is it gives people another reason to attend the show. Like it just lets them know what it is that's important. And the other thing about picking a theme is it really helps with promotion, even outside of your own network. So, let's say that you wanted to let people know, like here in Austin, there's some organizations, like there's a ton of them. They're online usually, and they like to let people know what's available, what's coming up for the weekend. If you have a theme, then that theme lets people know just a little bit more about the story and gives them even more reason to attend. Okay. And then lastly, the thing about the theme is that it can create some cohesiveness if you're doing a group show. So if you're doing a group show, and it's like it's with all of these different artists, and you're like, you know what, let's just go back to my idea, Rob, or not my idea, but the idea around picking a color, the blue show, that lets the artist know, you know what, I'm gonna paint more work that has to do with blue. Maybe it's a show around sisterhood. Maybe it's a show around empowerment. Maybe it's a show around, travel. Whatever your theme might be, it really helps the artist to kind of focus in on what kind of work do they want to create for that. And I think that's exciting. It's like, oh my gosh, like, okay, what can I use for inspiration here? And having that theme can be really, really helpful in knowing what kind of art you want to create and what kind of art you want to hang. Okay, big tip while we're talking about themes and everything in the show. And that is when what I was saying, okay, it'll kind of give you an idea of what to paint, what's the theme and everything. The other thing is make sure you are providing various price points for the collectors at the show. So what I mean is like, if you have all of your paintings are going to be like maybe 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000, whatever it might be, and because it's a certain size, like for me, a lot of my work that is around that 30 by 40, 36 by 36, those are all around the $4,000, $5,000 range. So I also like to include some of my smaller work, some 12 by 12s, that's going to be at a much more approachable price point. Also, for some shows that I've done works on paper and then have some really, really cool looking like acrylic frames that they're in. And that, provided more of like a $300, $400 price point. So have varying price points, because you might have people that are like, oh my gosh, I love this artist's work. And maybe I'm going to save up for one of their big pieces. But for now, I want to take this one. So keep in mind when you're creating for the show and you're creating for that theme to have various price points. Okay, now this is a fun tip that I didn't start doing until a little bit later, but I find it just makes me feel so good to incorporate this in my shows. And that is bring something in where you give back, right? Maybe you host what is that thing called, Amy? A raffle? Yes. Words are hard. Okay, so maybe you host like a raffle. So people come in, they buy raffle tickets, and then you draw the tickets, and then they get one of the artist's piece of work. If you're doing a group show, if it's a solo show, same thing. You could do a raffle, and then they could win one of your pieces, or they can win something that you've created specifically for the show. So within that raffle, though, you can give back, like all of the money from the raffle, you can give back to an organization that you feel passionately about. Now, you don't just have to do it in a raffle. You can also give back just by giving a percentage of the sales of your work to that organization. And this, so a couple of things happen here. Number one, like I said, it makes you feel so good that your art and the sales of your art are giving back. Like that just feels great to be able to write that check to that organization that you feel like just really touches your heart. That feels really, really good. But the other piece of it that is just really, really helpful is if you let that organization know that you are donating to, like, you're raising proceeds for that organization, very often those people will help to promote your show as well. So other people who are passionate about that project or passionate about that organization, they will know about it and want to attend. Here's something I know one artist did. So in her community, there was an area that there was a park there, and it had been run down, and she wanted to help rebuild this park. She wanted to create it with a playground for the kids and everything. And so she contacted the city recreational department, and they helped her promote it. And so then she was able to raise money. So it's a win-win for everyone. So giving back with your show can be just a great, great way, not only to increase sales, but to increase visibility about your art and your show. Okay. So we've decided where to have the show. We decided what you're going to do. We've decided the date. We've decided the theme. We've decided all of that. Now let's get into the nitty gritty. You've got to let people know about the show. So what are you going to do specifically to promote your show? Well, the first thing that most people think about is just like, okay, well, I'll promote it on social media. Yes, absolutely. Promote it on social media. But do not rely just on social media to get the word out about your show. Okay, so I'm going to tell you the other things to do, but since we're talking about social media, we might as well talk about it. Okay, so a lot of people are like, well, I don't know what to promote about on social media. What should I say? How often should I post? So let's talk about that. Number one, you want to do it like a wedding again, like start promoting a save the date on social media about a month ahead of time. If you do it 6 weeks, that's cool too. But definitely let people know, hey, save this date. I'm doing a show. And then if people want to drive in, that gives them some time to like create a plan, right? So first of all, with social media, definitely let them know way in advance to save the date. And then within that time frame, as you're painting your paintings for the show, post paintings that are in process, like really talk up the whole process of what you're doing for the show. Create some excitement, create some FOMO, fear of missing out. Get people excited about your show by showing the process. And then 2 weeks before the show, you want to promote the hell out of that show. Like if you're just doing it social media, if you do only 3 posts a week, those 3 posts need to be about the show. If you're doing 5 posts a week, you maybe don't do every single one about the show, but the majority of them need to be about the show. And if you're not sick of yourself on social media about promoting the show, you probably haven't promoted it enough. And here's why. Remember, statistically, only about 11% of our followers will see our posts consistently. So the goal is to hit as many people as possible so they see it. So not the same people are going to be seeing every single post, right? So promote it a lot. You will see every single one of them, which is why you're going to be sick of it, but not everyone is. So 2 weeks ahead of time, every single post should be about that. Okay. Now, when you are posting on social media, if you're doing a group show, don't forget to tag the other artists that you're doing the group show with. You can cross promote, because then if you guys have an understanding that they're going to promote you and you're going to promote them, that way their audience is going to see you. But if you tag them and they repost what you've posted, then their audience just from social media is going to start learning more about you. So if you're going to do social media, go ham, go hard, use it to the best of your ability, but don't just use social media. Because remember what I said, we want to promote it. We want to alert the masses. Okay. Now you may think that your little show and, wherever you do it, you may think it's not newsworthy or even noteworthy, but I'm telling you, art lovers love to see new artists, and they love to see new up and coming artists as well as established artists. So when you're thinking about promote it to the masses, there are several things that you can do. Now, like I said, here in Austin, there are so many online platforms that are what to do this weekend. If you just go to ChatGPT or you just go to Google and you Google. So if you go to the Googles, then you could just type in, what are online platforms, or what are the platforms or publications in Austin. What can I use to promote my work, or in whatever city you're in to promote your work? And I mean, there are so many of them. You could also do a press release. That seems a little daunting, I know, for a lot of people, but you could do that as well. But let people know. And see, here's the other thing about that theme, right? So when you have your theme and when you have your dates, that makes it so much easier for these platforms to promote you because they've got some language around it. They don't just say, hey, Jody King, who nobody knows. Well, hopefully they do, but Jody King is doing a show. It's more like, Jody King is hosting an art show all about the blah, 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 blah. And then that theme gets people excited if they don't know who you are as an artist. So do not sleep on all of these local publications that you can use to promote your art because people are wanting to do fun, new, different things. All right. So the other thing you can do is also create an Eventbrite page. Okay. Are you familiar with Eventbrite? I'm not sure if they have Eventbrite in other countries other than the US, but you can go to, I think it's eventbrite.com. Amy, can we put that in the show notes? Is that possible? Okay. So you can find it in the show notes and I believe it's free. Is it?
I think to
to a certain extent. So Amy, if you guys know Amy, the podcast producer, I think sometimes it's maybe $25, but it's minimal. It is very, very minimal. So if you create an Eventbrite page, this is great because then you can attach all of the information, like just the link from Eventbrite, and you can send that to those local publications. So within the Eventbrite, there's an RSVP. Well, there's a lot of other things. It tells you it tells people where to go, the time to go, what it's about, all of these things, right? But it also has an RSVP so you can get an idea kind of how many people are interested in coming or how many people are coming. Then with those local publications, you just share that Eventbrite and they've got all the information so that they can share it with their people. Super, super important to do something, to create an Eventbrite. And then, I'm going to say this, to promote it to your email list. Y'all, if you don't have an email list, please decide in 2025 that you're going to start taking advantage of your email list. Because remember, when people, I don't care if there's 25 people on your email list. There's, if you just think, if I send this information out to my email list, at least you won't forget anybody, right? Because likely the people on your email list are going to be acquaintances and friends and family and all of that, right? So send it out to your email list. Remember, if somebody's on your email list, they already think the sun shines out your ass. So not have an email list or not to promote it on your email list, that's a big mistake. So always, always promote it to your email list. And again, don't send it to them the day before. You're going to want to send a couple of emails out about this. One, just like social media, you're going to want to send an email out about a month in advance to save the date. And then you're going to want to send a couple more. I would probably say the week of, a reminder about the show, and maybe the night before or that morning, today is the day. So put yourself out there, let people know about your show. They're going to want to see your work. All right. Now, I know that that's been a lot of information. This is the point in the podcast that if you haven't already, you're going to want to write some things down. Okay. And this is what you're going to need for the show. All right. So number one, you need art. Duh. I mean, that's important, but you're going to need not only enough art for the show, but like I said, you're going to need art in different price points. And then if you're thinking about the space, and let's say you've looked at the space, you're like, I've got enough space here to hang like maybe 10 paintings or 12 paintings, or hell, maybe 30 paintings, whatever it might be. You're going to also want to have some backup, right? Because you're likely going to sell some work. And so that piece is either going to come off the wall or it's going to come off the easel. And then you're just going to have a blank space. Oops. Yeah, you don't want to have that blank space, right? So you want to have some backup paintings to put in their space. So always create more work for the show than you think you're actually going to need. The next thing you're going to need is you're going to need some labels. Okay, so just like if you go to a gallery show, there's labels next to every single painting. You're going to need some labels. Now, this is where you guys know I talk about Artwork Archive all the time. This is another great thing about Artwork Archive. So just a quick recap, Artwork Archive is an inventory management platform. It's artworkarchive.com. And if you go to artworkarchive.com/JK, you will get a 20% discount off of your first year. So what Artwork Archive is you load your painting onto the platform. It's so easy. It is so easy. You basically drag and drop, a photo of your painting. You put the price, you put where it's at, and so the name of it, and there it is. It's on Artwork Archive. Well, the other thing you can do is you can just push this button and you can create labels. And if you do that, Artwork Archive creates all of your labels for you that you can use for your show. Now, if you don't want to go to Artwork Archive, totally fine, but you will need to have some labels that you create, and they're going to need to have the name, the title of the painting. It's going to need to be the medium, which is like acrylic on mixed media on canvas, whatever your medium is. It's going to need to have the size of the painting and the price. Okay. I can promise you, you will sell maybe nothing or hardly anything if you don't have the label next to it with the price, because people are going to be too afraid to come and ask what the price is just in case they can't afford it. So please create a label with the price on it. Next thing it's good to have is print out your artist statement. Print it out, have it, in a nice little frame, and have it available for people to read and for people to see. Let them know a little bit more about you, especially if you're doing a group show and maybe some of the other artist collectors don't know anything about you. Having your artist statement right there is super helpful for them to connect with you. Because remember, people buy the art and they buy the artist. And the more information they have about you, the more likely they are to buy the art. So an artist statement, super important. Next thing, we always print out certificates of authenticity ahead of the show. So this is Artwork Archive. This comes in really handy. We look at the pieces that we have for the show and we choose those, and we go ahead and print out the certificate of authenticity, because in the middle of the show, when somebody decides to buy the painting, that's not when you need to get out to your computer and type it all in and figure it out. And then you don't have a printer, and it just makes it so awkward. So we print out the certificates of authenticity ahead of time. We sign them and we date them. We put them on the back of the painting and it's ready to go. So that's a big tip for your show, certificates of authenticity. The next thing you want to have is you want to make sure all of your paintings are wired well. Okay. If you don't know how to wire a painting, there is another episode on wiring a painting that we did. Do we know the episode of that? 91. Is that for hanging and wiring? Okay, good. But don't use the little sawtooth things. You don't want to do that. You want to present your work as fine art. And presenting as fine art means using D-rings, using wire. So wire them ahead of time. Definitely going to need that wire. Okay. The next thing you're going to need for your show is payment processing. All right. I know it's kind of like, at least for the shows that I've done, it's kind of like the day of where we're doing the installation. I'm like, oh shit, how are we going to accept payment? It's kind of a last minute thought. So let me help you with that. Don't let it be a last minute thought. There are several options. You can use Square. That's really easy to go online and sign up for Square. You just link your bank account to it. You can use Venmo, of course. A lot of people do that. And then you can also use PayPal. Like, there's so many different options for you, but don't forget it. You're going to need a way to accept payment. Unless I know somebody, I don't want to accept a check. I don't even know if people write checks anymore. I don't like to do that because, I don't know if that check's good. If I don't know you, I'm not so sure about that. So I always say electronic processing is the best. Now, since we're talking about payment, you're also going to need someone who you trust who can accept the payment for you. And the reason is there's going to be so many people there who are going to want to talk to you, and they're going to want to talk to you about your art, and they just want to have conversations. And then there's going to be that one person, or hopefully the 12 people or the 20 people that are also going to want to buy your art. So that's going to take you out of the conversations with people, right? and because you're going to be needing to do the payment processing. Well, imagine if you are the one that's sitting there doing the payment processing, but then there's another person that has questions about a painting. You need to be talking to that person, right? So have somebody available to you that can accept payment for you. Sometimes that's just a friend, or it can be, your daughter or a son, whoever it might be, but have somebody there to help you with payment processing. Okay, next one. I don't know if this is the most important one, but it is a real important one. And that is have drinks. And when I say drinks, I'm talking about drinks. You know what I'm saying? Like, you may not be a drinker. That's totally fine. But having alcohol available can really, like I said, can help sell some art, lower some inhibitions, have yeah, I'm just saying, y'all know what I'm saying, right? You don't have to have a bartender always. Sometimes you can. I've hosted lots of shows where I went to Costco, bought a couple of cases of wine, or, well, one case, the other case was for me, but you buy a case of wine, get 6 bottles of white, get 6 bottles of red, you have them out, you have the cups, you have the, if they're corks, which is good, you have the corkscrew there, and you let people help themselves. That's one way to do it. The other way is to, like I said, have a bartender and do that, but you want to have drinks available. And if you also have that, another good thing is it helps people stick around a little bit more. Now, it begs the question, should you offer food? You can totally offer food. Again, people might stay a little longer, but I wouldn't do like a whole thing of food, right? Most people don't need to have a buffet. Maybe some snacks would be good, but that's one of those optional items. Okay. Next to drinks, you got to have music. You just got to have some background noise. Okay. You don't have to have a DJ. I have done that, and that's really fun too. But you don't have to have a DJ, but definitely have some music going on in the background. It creates some ambience. I've also had a 3-string quartet for a show that I did. Like, there's always something, but music is so important for just setting the mood. And then lastly, I mean, there's a lot of things to do, but lastly, as far as important things to have is get yourself a photographer, right? Getting your show, some great pics of your show are so important. And it reminds me of like when I was young and I was going to church, I remember my grandmother used to say, "Did the preacher see you?" And I would be like, I don't know. And she's like, "If the preacher didn't see you, you weren't there." Right. So it's the same thing with photos. If there's no photography, did your show even happen? Like, definitely get a photographer. You don't have to hire a professional photographer, but you definitely want to go, okay, you are in charge of all the photos for the night, because you're going to be able to use those photos everywhere. You're going to be able to use them on your email list. You're going to be able to use them on social media. You're going to be able to use them for all your future stuff. So get yourself some great photos from the night. Okay, we're about to wrap this up, but I couldn't wrap it up without talking about how to install the work. Okay, so we're talking about installation. First thing I want to tell you is it's going to take more time than you think. So if you think it's going to take, 2 hours, give yourself 4. Okay. Especially if you're ADD like me, it's going to always take more time than you think. So give yourself enough time. If you can install the day before, that's like the biggest blessing ever. But I've done plenty of shows where we don't have time, especially if you're leasing the space or if it's a community space. They're like, you got it for this day and for this evening, you got to get in and you got to get out. So give yourself plenty of time to install. And then you got to think about, okay, how am I going to install the show? Am I going to use walls or am I going to use easels? If you're going to use easels, obviously you're going to need to have plenty of easels on hand. You can also rent easels. You don't have to buy all of them. But you're going to need easels. If you're going to hang them on the wall, let's talk about what you're going to need to hang them on the wall. Now, again, please refer to episode 91 because a lot of this information is available. It's also available on YouTube if you want to see how we hang our paintings. But anyway, here's what you're going to need. You're going to need a level. You're going to need a hammer. You're going to need nails, and you're going to need hooks. Okay. I always say it's better to have those hooks that, you nail it in and there's the little hook there. And the reason is that hook can help to keep your painting straight. Whereas if you just use a nail, the nail is round, right? And so the wire can kind of slip a little bit. It stays put a little bit more if you use the ones with the hook. The other thing you're going to need, you're going to need push pins, or you're going to need tape to adhere the label to the wall. Okay. I like to use those teeny tiny little push pins, but again, it's sometimes you don't have that available, or maybe the venue doesn't want any little holes. So you can just use the tape. And then lastly, this is so exciting. You don't want to forget your red dot stickers, right? You can get those red dot stickers online. You can get it off in supply, wherever, but you're going to want to have those little red dot stickers to put on the label of every painting that sells. Okay. Now, pro tip, let's say that you're hanging the show and there's a painting that is already sold. Keep it in the show and put that red dot sticker on the label. And the reason is that gives third-party validation to all of the collectors that come in that somebody else bought your work. And this goes back to the idea of FOMO. People want what other people want. Okay. So it's just like the person that you broke up with that you didn't care about, and then somebody else starts dating him and you're like, maybe I was wrong about that, right? People want what other people want. So you can see it everywhere. This is how trends are created, in marketing. So have those red dots, put a red dot on if you can. Again, I really recommend going to episode 91, because it's going to talk about how when you're hanging the show, you, as much as possible, you want to hang on the wall. You want to hang the art at 60-inch on center, and that might make no sense to you at all. But if you refer back to that episode, that'll give you all the information that you need. But sometimes if you have limited wall space and you have a lot of art, you're going to want to hang, more than just one. You might want to stack some. That's fine. That's totally okay. But what you want to avoid is overcrowding the wall. You want to definitely leave enough space between each painting so it's not just like you can't focus on any of it. And I know you guys have gone into either like galleries. You won't see this on really high-end galleries, but you might see it in galleries where there's lots of paintings that are kind of stacked up, and there's paintings basically floor to ceiling on the wall. It's like you don't know where to focus. You don't know where to look. And so it actually kind of devalues, or it has an interpretation of it kind of devaluing the art. So you definitely want to leave enough space when you're hanging the show between each piece so that people can focus on your art. Okay. Last two things that I think are really helpful, and that is if you are in a very big room and you want to address your audience who has come, it's helpful to have a speaker and a microphone. So consider that. If you're in a smaller room, or if you're in your home or in your studio, that's definitely not necessary. But it's kind of one of those things that you don't want to think of as an afterthought, because it can be really, really helpful. And then the last thing is, if you are in a venue where you have to have all of the holes in the walls patched before you leave, hire somebody from TaskRabbit or a friend. They are in charge of patching and filling those holes, because you're going to be so exhausted by the end of the night. That is the last thing that you want to do. Okay. So I hope that's really helpful. Remember, we cannot wait for to be offered an opportunity. We've got to create our own opportunities, and having a show will do that. And then lastly, remember this: if you host a show and you don't sell anything that night, remember, because I've had this happen, it's not that you won't sell anything from the show, and it's not that the show was a waste of time, because what has happened 100% of the time, if I do not sell anything, I end up selling something later. Somebody will come back and say, hey, I was at that show in April, I was at your show in whatever, and I saw a piece and I'm ready to purchase now. So don't lose heart if the show is not what you had hoped it would be. And if you are watching this on YouTube, we hope you will like and subscribe to the channel. And then if you're listening to this on one of your favorite platforms, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. All right, until next time, take good care of yourselves and each other. Peace out. Whether you are a new painter or a seasoned one, there's always something that we can do to elevate our art to fine art status. That's why I created the color course for Rebels, to give you the tools to do just that without the hefty price tag of art school. I am a grateful 7-figure artist, and this course is everything that I use in my art practice to sell paintings globally, to get into art galleries, to get into exhibitions, and everything like that. So the color course for Rebels is going to teach you all about values. It's going to teach you about composition. It's going to give you tips for you to find your own style. It's going to help with color saturation. It's going to give you my trademark color mixing method. And within the course, I also paint an entire painting, start to finish, including the fugly stage. And the price for the course starts at only $67. So if you'd like to learn more about it and elevate your art, go to the link in the show notes to learn more about the color course for Rebels.